heroes and there are legends. Heroes come and go. Legends never die. We usually say that you cannot become a legend before death. These are living legends. If the legends fall silent, who will teach the children of our ways? Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 5, brought to you by Titan Sensor, is proud to present The Legends. Sun Coaches is proud to partner with Titan Sports for the next 4 seasons on Sun Coaches Podcast. Titan GPS delivers technological superiority and improved player performance through wearable GPS made for high school football and strength and conditioning. From speed training to athlete recruit to workload enhancement, Titan is the easy-to-use yet comprehensive GPS tool to get it done. There's no minimum to get started, and Titan will walk you through every step to success. Message us on X at Titan Sensor to learn more and get in touch. Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 5, the Legends Series, and I got one with us today that he's done a lot. He's been a high school coach. He's been a college coach, won back-to-back state championships at Peach County, has 170 wins on his resume, and still cooking. Coach Rance Gillespie, thanks for being on with me.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I am flattered to be considered a legend. I don't know how accurate that is, but I'll certainly take it at this point in my career. And, you know, you look back over 30 years, there's no way that I would have thought anybody would have put me in that category. But I'm certainly flattered and honored to be here.
Well, I appreciate it. And, Coach, like we do with everybody, start by telling us where you grew up.
I grew up in Clayton, Georgia, extreme northeast corner of the state, and loved every minute of it. I say it's a lot like being raised in Mayberry, and it's changed a lot since I was there. I haven't been back in 30 years since I graduated high school, but still think the world of it. It's a great place. It was certainly a great place to grow up, and made some lifelong friends there.
And where'd you go to high school?
I went to Rabun County High School.
And what all did you play in high school? I know back then we all played more than one thing, generally.
Yeah, the specialization was not a thing yet. So, I was fortunate enough to be brought up by a mother and a dad that didn't allow you to stay in the house, and so they kind of kicked you out. And you just you did it all. I played football, basketball, baseball, and golf. Believe it or not. So you wouldn't believe that I played golf in high school based on my golf game now, but I did letter in 4 sports in high school. And, like you said, we kind of did everything. And, I think to a certain extent, maybe as coaches, we've ruined a little bit of that, because I think there's certain benefits from that the sports get from playing off one another. And I certainly don't believe in specialization.
Well, I know Coach Teague and Coach Barden said in their episodes that we've gotten away from high school sports being extracurricular these days. And I think that's part of it too, is making them specialize.
Well, it's unfortunate that, there's a trend, and I know you hear, if you turn on Sports Center, you hear Coach Saban talking about, how we've really kind of warped what college football's about. College football's supposed to be about making an investment for later in life, not the final investment. But I think as college football changes, high school football can't do anything but. And so certainly there's a lot of evolution that has gone on from the time that I played to the early point of my career to maybe especially the last 3 to 5 years. It's changed more than ever. But, I still have a passion for the game.
Absolutely. So did you get an opportunity to play college ball after high school?
I did. That was the ultimate goal. I was lightly recruited, I guess is the best way to put it. And at the end of the day, I had grown up always wanting to play for the University of Georgia, got an opportunity to walk on there, and that's what I chose to do, and wouldn't trade it in the world. I was the guy that, was replicating a corner from old replicating looks. Took a lot of pride in what I did, and made a lot of friends, and formed a lot of friendships, and really established some beliefs that I have as far as a culture is concerned. So I wouldn't change that. It was a tough go, and there ain't nothing easy about being a walk-on, especially in 1980s and early 90s. It was tough, but I cherish those times.
So when you were in college, did you know that you wanted to coach, or did you go to school to major in something else and wandered into the wrong line, or how did that work out?
Yeah, so that's a really cool story for me. So like most of us, when I was 17, 18 years old, it was every bit about how much money I could make. So if you look at my picture, my freshman picture at the University of Georgia, underneath it says pre-med. And so that's what I was. And so I knew my grades were going to need to be important and all of that stuff. And I did. I poured into my grades. I was on the directorate honor roll for the first two straight years, every semester. And, and was able to walk on, play football. That gave me my out. And then, like I said, I was a walk-on backup. And really had poured myself into, the classes, and started to look around, and I was like, I dreaded going to class, but I enjoyed getting back to the dorm and hanging out with my guys and that fellowship. And I love playing ball, and I always will love playing ball. And I was like, this is crazy. And God created something in me that caused me to grow up just enough to maybe chase something that I was passionate about instead of just chasing material things. And thank goodness he did. And so I changed my major, and I ended up majoring in history, and became a history teacher and a football coach. And that was the goal from about my second and a half year at Georgia, and I graduated in 4 years to finish it out. It still wasn't the most mature thing, because even with that being the decision, it was still all about me. But I think in the coaching world, God chose to put me there so that he could allow to continue to grow me and allow me to continue to mature and realize that life's not about me, and put me, thank goodness, in a profession that I finally realized that life's about along the way. And I certainly think coaching is a great platform for that.
So what was your first job out of college coaching?
So my first job was, I was convinced at that point I wanted to be a college coach. And I had done my student teaching under T. McFerrin at Elbert, and was able to be exposed to some really cool stuff. And one of those was a really good staff that had a lot of connections in the college world. And so I took a job as a GA at Gardner Webb, and that really opened my eyes. I wasn't making any money. I was actually living on the backside of the urinals. There was a little room in the locker room, and literally on the backside of the urinals, there was 2 bunk beds thrown in a room. That's where I was living, and was homesick, ready to get married. And my wife was very patient, and she denies this to this day. But we had a discussion about, what it would look like, she felt like it would take in order for us to get married, and those things. And she said, I would really like for you to be able to buy a washer and a dryer. And so I said that was kind of out of the picture. And so I started looking for a high school job so that I could get married. And it wasn't all her. It was a lot more me than it was her. She was willing to battle through all of it. And I knew that it was time for me to grow up and be a husband that could provide something for my family, and was fortunate to have a guy that had coached me in high school. And I reached out to him and I said, Coach, I think I want to, give a shot at some high school football. And he said, well, I've got a buddy of mine in Thomasville, Georgia. His name is George Bobo, and he's looking for a receivers coach. And I was a secondary coach at the time. Actually, I'd played in the secondary and had been coaching the secondary. And so I go to Thomasville, interview, and tricked him into hiring me as a receiver coach. And it was a fabulous way to start my career. I mean, just a wonderful man, number one, and learned so much about, being a coach, the coach's life, running a program, cultural stuff, and not to mention the amount of offense and his knowledge on raising quarterbacks. And Mike Bobo was our quarterback my first year there. So and then some of the lifelong friendships that I made on that staff. Just really, really blessed to be able to start my career there.
Well, how long were you in Thomasville?
We were only there for 2 years. So Mike graduated, and then he went to Georgia, redshirted, and we all knew that he was fixing to get to play. And George wanted to step away and be able to go watch him play and devote himself to that. And we all understood. So at the end of that 2 years, we all kind of split up and went our separate ways.
And where did you end up?
I ended up, I have been unbelievably blessed with the guys that molded my career. I've already, told you T. McFerrin is when I was doing my student teaching, and then George Bobo. And then after I left Coach Bobo, I went to work with Charles Winslette and learned so much. Coach Winslette is one of the most intelligent human beings that I've ever been around in my entire career. So gifted on Friday night with quick wit and to be able to make quick adjustments. And, part of the coaching world, part of the talent of the coaching world is the ability to see. And I don't know that anybody can see it the way he sees it, and can see things all the way across the field that 33 years after being in it, that I still am envious of his ability to see things. So I got to go do that and work with him at Coffee for a year.
And what happened after Coffee?
So after Coffee, I was eager to be a coordinator. Of course, I had, like most young coaches, I'd been doing it for 3 years. I mean, heck, I knew it all. Right? It was time for me to progress to a play caller and an offensive coordinator. And I was ambitious and hungry, which in a lot of ways is good. And now, on the back end of my career, as I'm hiring young coaches, I love to hire young and ambitious guys. They work hard and all those things. That was certainly me. And a couple of my friends had gone, that we were together in Thomasville, had gone to work for Rodney Walker at Peach County. And one of them, Alan Rodemaker, called me and said, man, we got players. This is the place to be. You need to come up here. And Rodney's going to, hire an offensive coordinator. And I was like, great. So got in touch with Rodney, got in front of Rodney, ended up getting hired there as Rodney's offensive coordinator. And again, another guy that, Rodney, all of those guys in their own way can be demanding and as far as working for them. But Rodney, especially when you're his guy, and you knew how much that guy loved you, and he bragged on you all the time. And and there were days where he was in your behind 3 feet too. And that was great for me. It was, young and full of himself. And occasionally I probably did need to be brought back down to earth. it was a wonderful experience. And again, I worked for 4 incredible men and who molded everything about how to coach, what the culture should look like, the discipline of a football team. It all starts with toughness, and those things have never left me. And so, I know there's very few people that have the opportunity that I had to work for 4 men of that caliber, and I am just extremely blessed.
And y'all won a state championship there, didn't you?
We played for one, and in '98, and got beat by Daugherty. And
that's right. That was Big John. Big John was at Daugherty. That's right.
Yes, and he had some ball players.
Yeah, they had some
were
dudes.
Yes, they were tough, and John was all about toughness, and you knew it was going to be a physical battle when they stepped on the field with you, and they were not going to out scheme you, but they were going to out tough you, and they were going to play hard. And golly, it was always intimidating to play his team. So we had played them when I was at Thomasville, and then of course we kind of started a little rivalry there with Daugherty when I was at Peach. We ended up seeing each other a couple of times in the playoffs, and when I ended up going back as a head coach, we ended up playing them for a state championship. So got a lot of respect for the program that he established there, and just what they were all about.
And then you went and got your first head coaching job.
Yeah. So again, young, eager, had to do it, 29 years old. And again, was ready. And I found out real quick and was humbled, but Banks County gave me an opportunity to come there and be their head coach. And I was in way over my head and didn't do a great job. Learned through a lot of failure, and ended up at the end of 2 years was 5-15. And I was like, my God, I have ruined my career. After being fortunate enough to work for 4 great guys and establish a great base, here I go and screw it up and end up with a 5-15 record as a head coach. And people are going to say, oh, well, he would be a good assistant, but I don't know how he is as a head coach. But fortunately, Rodemaker had stayed Rodney left Peach the same year I did. Okay. And I've always been a loyal guy and felt like Rodemaker had been at Peach longer than I had, and that he should be the next coach in line. And so when Rodney left, I supported Rodemaker getting that job, and I left to go get a head job of my own. It worked out. And Rodemaker to this day is one of my dearest friends. And so we all split up. Rodemaker stayed at Peach. And 2 years later, me with the 5-15 record, Rodemaker calls and says, hey, do you want to come back? And I was like, Rod, I'm going to continue to try to be a head. And he's like, no, I'm leaving. I'm going to go into a family business. Do you want to come back? And I was like, dang right. And between him and Rodney both supporting me and a Booster Club president there that thought the world of me, that was just a great human being and as good a Booster president as there ever could be, a lady named Joe Cobb, and a principal with an open mind. They gave a guy with a 5-15 record an opportunity to go back to Peach County. And once again, I got extremely blessed because I didn't deserve that job. And but I got it, and my career flipped immediately. We had some players and we won some games. I was able to put together some really good staffs, and was there for a 6-year run. And I think over the 6-year run, we played for 3 state championships, won 2. We won 4 region championships, played in 5, and just an incredible run. And still, I will tell anybody to this day, it was a really, really good job. Peach County great place, really simple place to coach as far as expectations and, not a lot of recruiting, moves in, moves out, all of that stuff. You got what you got, but you got some good players. And, I'm sure all of that's changed since I was there. But when I was there, you went in and you coached ball, and the kids loved ball, and they played fast and they played hard. And it was a fun place to coach football.
So what was winning that first one like as a head coach?
Well, I will be honest. I certainly remember losing the first one because we lost the first one that I played, that I coached. Right? We lost to LaGrange. And, of course, now Steve was loaded. And I tell him to this day. So Steve Pardue was head coach at LaGrange, and we've had a history with one another. We played each other when he was at LaGrange. I was at Peach. We played each other several times in the playoffs, and I have the most wins, but he won, in my opinion, he won the one that counted. He won the state championship. We only played in the state championship one time, and but good gosh, they had Trey Blackman. They had Travis Hart, who a lot of people would argue is better than Trey Blackman. They had the Ford kid that played. It was an ungodly bunch. The quarterback was Blake Mitchell that played at South Carolina. I mean, it was who's who. They were loaded. It was a heck of a ball game. They ended up beating a 16-14, I think was the final. Or maybe it was 14-12. Don't quote me on that, but great football game. And I say all that to end with this, and why I remember it was I cried for 24 hours, and kind of like that feeling that I said, that I felt like I had ruined my career and all that I'd worked for, by maybe biting off some stuff a little bit too soon. I felt like I had, been given an opportunity that people wait a lifetime to get to, and still at a really early age, and was like, I may never get that opportunity again. And oh my gosh, it crushed me. It crushed everything about me, but it also drove me to want to get better. And there were schematic things within that game that I look back and I'm like, golly, what an idiot. And one of them was Trey Blackman himself. I remember, Steve was smart enough on 3rd and long. He didn't play him at the inside linebacker. He walked him down to a 5 technique and put him on this kid that we called Big Show. Big Show was a heck of a high school football player, really good, but he wasn't as fast as Trey Blackman. And so 3rd and long, we're giving up for pressure almost every 3rd and long because Trey Blackman is running by him. And my strategy for that was after the first 2 or 3 drives, I walked back to the bench and I'm like, Joe, what's going on? And his head was down. And I said, boy, look at me. And he raised his head and big tears are running down that kid's face. He is giving everything he's got. And he looked at me and he said, Coach, and he's crying. He said, Coach, I can't catch him. And I was like, yeah, you can. You can. I didn't want and I didn't have another answer other than, yes, you can. Think positive. Well, a year later, we learn how to chip. We learn how to answer some of those questions. We learn how to, do some things a little bit better. And so it motivated me in a lot of different ways to, that, hey, as the coach, yeah, you're responsible for some personal motivation. You're certainly responsible for the culture of the team and those things, but you're also responsible for helping these kids schematically to survive some things and not put them in bad situations. And I did that night, but I grew from it. And a couple of years later, we were fortunate enough to get back in it. And we went down and we played Daugherty. Like I said, the team that had kind of been a nemesis for us. And we played Daugherty and Hugh Mills, and we were able to walk out of there with a W, and that was the first one. And golly, I don't think there's nothing like walking off that field the last game, winning it, knowing that it's the last one. There's not another one next week, and there's not another better feeling than that. And then we were able to turn around and do it again the following year. But that first one, we actually started out the season 0-3, and that made it even that much more gratifying at the end because it certainly wasn't given. We had to battle for it. We had to overcome. We had to stick together. We had to persevere. And, a lot of things that you accredit football to teaching young men, we had to prove during the early parts of that year. And then, you're sitting there and to be quite honest, Darty had flat intimidated our kids in the past and they didn't. And to grow up and to have the confidence to go in there and play and win one of those games, just a tremendous blessing. And then turn around the next season and to win it again was a true blessing as well. And a lot of pieces were the same, but quarterback wasn't the same. There was enough different. Leading receiver wasn't the same. There was enough different pieces that it was it had to come together. It had to come together quick, and it had to gel, and it did. So.
Well, that was one thing. One of the things I've noticed that the guys that have won multiple state championships always say that even the back-to-back guys are like, well, the next year you would think they're going to kind of be the same, but they're really not. It's a totally different team. They might not have been as talented, or they might not have been as whatever. They might have been more focused, or they might have been more, better leadership or whatever it is. But it's just there's something different about them, but it sets them apart.
No, I will tell you the most talented team that we had at Peach County was the year before the state championship. And we were really talented. Now that the first state championship year, we had two kids on that team that were obviously really talented. We had a receiver and a quarterback that were a great combination. But the year before, we had those two kids and a running back, which our running backs were talented. 98, or in 02 or 06. I'm sorry, I don't want to take anything away from them, but they, the kid before them was Florida commit. We had an Illinois offensive lineman. We had a Kansas State linebacker. We had a University of Georgia linebacker, and all of those kids. That was supposed to be the group, and they graduated, and that's why we started out 0-3, and that was 05, by the way. But we started out 0-3 in 05, and then we went on to win the next dozen and win a state championship.
So how long were you at Peach?
After we won the second state championship, Chris Hatcher, who was a friend of mine, left Valdosta State and took the job at Georgia Southern. And we had talked, in general before, and he called me and said, I may have something for you. And it was a really, really hard decision. It was, to go to Georgia Southern, give that a shot, or to stay at Peach County and hopefully build a dynasty, and because I loved Peach County. It was a wonderful job with wonderful people, and staff was great. And, but, like I told you in the beginning, I started my career wanting to coach college football, and it was going to be a sacrifice for me and my wife and my dad. But I remember my wife looked at me and goes, you got to try it. You got to see where it goes. You got to give it a shot. So glad that I did. I was able to, it was a great growth period for me to be able to go back and reset and set back and look at a program from a different perspective as an assistant, instead of getting caught up, in the day-to-days ins and outs of driving a program as a head coach, to be able to go back and reflect. And that created a lot of professional growth for me in so many areas. And Chris Hatcher was awesome to work for. And, and we shared a lot of common beliefs and a lot of common philosophies and and all of that stuff. But it was a great 3 years. Unfortunately, we didn't win enough games there. And at the end of the third year, I experienced, the awful side of football. And that was, your head coach being let go and wondering what you're going to do. And then it gets kind of real, but, I've experienced that twice, and neither time, I don't know, I guess God just gave me a peace both times. And I was very fortunate to be able to certainly land on my feet as the head coach at Valdosta High School. And, that was a very unique experience for me going to Valdosta. You hear all the stuff about Valdosta, and then there's even a book about my transition called Must Win. And certainly that's how it feels being in Valdosta. But a quick story on how that book originated with me was they were doing a reception when we first got there. I just finished finalizing the staff, which we had put together pretty fast. And so they had a reception for all of us at the museum there at Valdosta High School. And I remember going in, and there were people like Betty Bazemore, June Hyder was there. She was still living at the time. And Jack Rudolph, Jerry Don Baker. I know those names may not mean a lot to a lot of people. Butch Brooks, but they are, you want to talk about legacies. You go to Valdosta and you throw those names around and you're saying something. But it was also the boosters and all of that to, welcome the new staff. And it was so much fun to get to mingle with that group and hear all the stories. But there was this one guy that was standing up against the wall that I had not met or mingled with, through this 3 or 4 hour event. And he just had stood over there by himself. And so towards the end of the night, I made my way over there to him, and he said, "Coach, my name's Drew Jabera, and I'm a freelance writer for the New York Times." And they had hired him to come down and cover the dismissal of Coach Tomberlin and that transition. And he had stumbled on to enough interesting things in Valdosta, and I'll leave it at that he goes back and says, "Hey, if the new guy will let me, I think I've got a book," and so he said, "I want to follow you around for the first year of your transition and write a book." And I said, "Great, I'll see you in the morning." And it was a good experience. It really was. Drew became a really good friend of mine. And, they say that you can learn so much by journaling. And that's what it was for me, except I didn't have to write it. Nor would I wouldn't have been that disciplined to do that on a daily basis. So there's some really funny stories in there, about a guy named David Waller, who was he was the chairman of the Booster Club. He was also the chairman of the board at one point, and was a guy that was the local heating and air, just to, allude to all the other stuff that he was able to do. And David's a very powerful guy in that community, but just that man loved Valdosta High School, loved the Wildcats, wanted what was best for the Wildcats. And so after I got hired, David calls me and says, "Hey, I need to come pick you up. There's a group of people that, as the head coach, you need to know, and you need to know about their history." And I'm like, "Okay, awesome. Sounds good. I get it. Okay, come get me." And so he did. I get in the car and we go downtown, and almost right across from the stadium, there's a graveyard. And we pull into the graveyard, and the car stops. And I'm like, "Lord, what are we doing?" And he goes, "Get out. I want to show you something." And so we get out and we're walking down a row of plots and graves. And he's like, "I own almost every one of these." And I was like, "Okay." And we get to one and he goes, "That's where my wife and I are going to be buried together one of these days." And I was like, "Okay." And then there's an open one. Okay. And we go to the next one. No, I'm sorry. Okay. Next to him was Coach Hyder, because Coach Hyder was his best friend. He goes, "That's Coach Hyder's buried right there. That's my best friend. And one day I'll lay next to him and we'll talk about Wildcat football." And then there was one for Nick's wife, or Coach Hyder's wife. And then there was an open one. And then there was one where Coach Bazemore was, and there was one for Coach Bazemore's wife. And so I'm kind of going through my mind, what's up with the open one? And he goes, "I own that one right there too." And he said, "If you win 200 games, I'll put you and your wife right there." So that was my first experience of the history of Wildcat football. But there's you hear all the horror stories of what Valdosta can be, and I'm sure it can be in a lot of ways, and it can be a bear of a job. My experience there was awesome. I loved it. We were successful. We were able to, when I got there, the place had not beat Lowndes in 8 years. That's a crosstown rival, regardless. And certainly we didn't measure our program based on Lowndes, but we did measure our program based on our success against a rival. And we were able to beat them, able to split with them over my 6-year period there, and really flip the place. As far as a turnaround, that may be the best turnaround that I've had throughout my career, and just really, really proud of what we accomplished there. Got an opportunity to go back to Georgia Southern. So I found out real quick that they weren't, upset with me, but just give them time and they would be. So we were right on the verge, and I left. One of the things that I've really prided myself on, or there's 3 head coaches that are out there because I left. One at Peach, who won a state championship. One at Valdosta, who the year after I left won a state championship, and one at Hart, who I'm pulling for to win a state championship. So, have been able to, and to me, that just says that maybe I left it a little bit better than when I found it, or at least they liked it the way that I left it, and wanted to leave it with one of my assistants. So that's probably, I'm probably as proud of that as anything. But yeah, after 6 years at Valdosta, go back to Georgia Southern. Probably went back for a lot of wrong reasons. Southern had become it was not in the Southern Conference. It was the Gulf South, or not a Gulf South, but a Sun Belt job, which meant the pay was way different. Was still able to put that into my teacher retirement. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it changed my life for forever. So we go back and do that, and it doesn't work out. We're trying to transition to offense from, more option based, a little bit more pro style and those things. It just did not work out. Numerous reasons that you can point, and certainly I was one of those. And looking for another job, and ended up at Hart County, and behind Peach County, Hart County may have been as good a job as I've had, and and I wouldn't say behind, I would say equal to, and they're very similar. Small country towns where football is important, and they're going to empty the town to come out and watch you play on Friday night, and great booster clubs, and great support out of your administration. The superintendent at Hart County was a really good friend of mine. He was a guy that had played at Georgia, that was the number 2 offensive lineman in the country coming out of high school, so had been a football coach. Football was always important to him, and certainly supported what we did. So really, what a great job, and gave my wife and I an opportunity to go and pound the lake, and we're perfectly happy to call it a day there. And I was looking for a place at that point, after being at Valdosta for 6, and which is a good stay in football anymore, but then only at Southern at 1. I wanted some stability for my kid, and she graduated from Hart County, and it was great. So was there for 6 years, and was perfectly happy to finish it out there. And I got a call from Mike Bobo, and Mike said, "Hey, there's a job over in Columbus that Kirby and I know a couple of people over there, and they had called us, and we gave them your name. Do whatever you want to with it." And I told my wife, I was like, I'm happy. I don't know about going and doing it all and looking into that. And Claudette was like, "Well, look, these guys have recommended you. You're going to sound arrogant and and all of this if you just thumb your nose at it. Let's at least go look at it." So we did. We fell in love with the place immediately. And how you just know, and it feels right. It did. And so for the last 3 years, I've been at Brookstone School in Columbus, Georgia, which is an independent school in Columbus with really high academic standards and a different culture than I've been exposed to. But really proud of what we've accomplished there. I mean, we've played in 2 semifinals and 1 state championship in 3 years. So really pleased with what's going on at Brookstone.
That's awesome. So what are some things over the years that have changed with the coaching profession that you may like or don't like, or as far as high school goes, that you've noticed that you didn't really have to worry about when we first got started?
Oh, I was talking with a friend of mine, and we had both worked for Coach Walker at different points in our career, and we were talking about some of the things that I remember going on as an assistant at Peach, and that he remembered at a couple of, and I was like, did we really do that? So certainly there's a and probably rightfully so, but there's a different expectation, the way that you communicate with kids all the time in the coaching profession, and I'm not saying that either any level of this is right, wrong, or indifferent, but my parents who grew up in the 50s and the 60s, they were taught to not question authority. Then they raised me, and in the 80s, in the late 70s and 80s, that to question authority, at least question. And then I've really jacked the whole system up because I raised my kid, this last generation, that they are the authority. And I think that as a coach, if you don't have your finger on how all that's changing, you're not going to be effective. You're going to be labeled as one of those coaches that can't communicate with his team and all of those things. So I think you need to understand that all kids in the 50s were probably coached fairly similar. All kids in 2025 are coached very different. And I think you have to understand a kid's personality. I think you have to understand your individuals a lot better. Whereas, early on in my career, you could get away with coaching a unit and coaching them all with some equity. I think the equity now is you better learn all of their personalities and what resonates with those individuals, because, raising your voice, getting passionate about something, it doesn't, a kid will go in, some kids will go into a shell now with you over that, so, and then I think there's some family structural things that have, in certain spots, I won't say in every spot, that have eroded, and I think the role of a coach is probably bigger now than ever. From a leadership standpoint, from a real male role model standpoint, from a how to be a husband standpoint, from how to be a daddy standpoint. I would say 30 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of daddies on your football team, and I think maybe that kind of reached a peak and is probably declining. But still, you got kids that has never been modeled for on how to be a daddy, and so I think the expectations of the coaches probably expanded to a certain extent over a 33-year career, I don't think all of those things are bad. I think for the most part, you accept those roles and you grow with those roles. And, like I told you to begin with, God gave me a platform to change some lives, and I'm grateful for that platform every day. And I know everybody quotes the Billy Graham, quote of a preacher can reach a congregation and a coach can reach, even more with all the different teams that he is able to coach. And certainly that's not the exact wording of that, but I think it's accurate. I think it's even more accurate as we move on and my experience with it. And lastly, I will say this. And this is going to sound really old school, and I hope everybody understands where I'm coming from. But, there's very few places in society that are left where a young man can still find physical toughness, spiritual toughness, mental toughness, and it's still okay for that kid to get knocked on his ass, bleed, okay, and for a grown man to look at him, pat him on the butt, and say, hey, get up, you're going to be okay. There's not another place where that happens anymore. Very few of our kids are exposed to working outside in blue collar and all of that stuff. And there's a certain physical or physical toughness, mental toughness, spiritual toughness that unfortunately erodes the further we get away from those core values. And football is one of the last strongholds where that's still okay. And so anyway, yeah, that's my soapbox, my crusade.
I like it. So you mentioned a few of the guys. Who are some of the coaches over the years that you just love competing against or seeing across the field, whether they tore you up or you tore them up, just relationships you built, over the years that you just loved seeing those guys that you competed against?
I will say this. And one of them is just because it's fresh on my mind. And, I've been fortunate to be a part of some of the biggest rivalries in the state. In my mind, and it wouldn't go down as one of the biggest rivalries, but the Peach County Perry game was always a huge rivalry, and it got way one lopsided. It got like an 18-year run on Peach County's part. Of course, Perry recently has leveled that field, but so you feel the pressure of those rivalry games, especially when that rivalry game is Lowndes Valdosta, okay, and or Hart Elbert, and even in the situation that I'm in now, Brookstone Pacelli, and I will say that's when those competitive juices are revved up.